back to our series on the Beechcraft 60 piston dupe from our lovely friends over at Black Square. Today's video, we're going to be dealing with kind of the cruise side of things, getting the mixture set up, sort of doing our usual monitor, as well as getting ready for descent. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we're enjoying a nice little kind of climb upwards. Our destination today is, of course, going to be Montreal. We can see we're pretty much right on course here. I'm getting my little altitude alerter here saying I've got just about 1,000 feet to go. We're climbing at about a 7-degree climb. You can see we've got the power set correctly. We're using maximum performance here. We're doing about 130 now that we've gotten ourselves up pretty darn high here. Our aircraft, of course, is kind of just cruising along. Like I said, nothing too chaotic here. Like I said, keeping it relatively simple for us. I've got a KLN 90 providing us with navigational stuff, and now it's kind of a matter of kind of doing all this sort of maintenance. One thing we didn't get to see from the end of last video is our engines did get pretty warm. I actually ended up popping open the cowl flaps here for the purposes of keeping us at that 390 or less sort of a temperature here, and that's looking pretty good right now. And again, my cowl flaps, oh boy, look at that. They're snapped open, which gives us all that extra drag to make our flight just a little bit more exciting like that. So of course we do reach our top of climb here. You can see we're just executing our initial turn here, which is exactly what we intended to do. It's really a little bit of babysitting of the plane. And again, we're going to be looking at pressurization, we're going to be looking at temperature, and of course, a little tiny bit of navigation. We're keeping it simple for today. We'll get a little more complicated later on with some of these other options, like this beautiful RNAV unit down here in a different video. So now that we're, of course, at our cruise, we're going to go ahead and get all of our power options set up. Now, luckily for us, they give us a lovely chart at the end of the manual to kind of help us out a little bit like this. What I can see here is we're a little bit over this, so it looks like we're looking at 31.9 and 2750 is going to be a pretty good combination of power there. So the nice thing is I'm already at 2750, so I don't have to worry about that part. But one thing that it will do is I'll reduce our power down to 31.9. Again, slowly. Remember, these are turbocharged engines. If you pull the throttle to 0, the engine will shut off. Just be kind of mindful of that. That's kind of a surprise some people discover the hard way. Give it just a couple more taps there, and that's about as close as I'm going to get to that as possible. Now that that is set, of course, one of the things I'm going to do is flip on prop sync. Prop sync is nice for us. It's going to eliminate that again, technical term that you sometimes get when you're cruising at altitudes like this. Next, what I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to go ahead and close up the cowl flaps a little bit. My engine's just cooling off very quickly. People always say, what's the magical setting for cowl flaps? I don't know. Usually I crack it about that, and that seems to be pretty good. But again, we're going to be monitoring our engine temperature the whole time. Coming down here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that our fuel boost pumps are in the off position. I've already shut my lights off a while ago, so I don't have to worry about that too much. This is all looking good. This is all looking good. We have no ice, so I'm not going to worry about any of that aspect of our flight. But one of the things we are going to have to stress about, of course, is going to be dealing with our good old friend, the mixture, which is a little bit different in this aircraft, but nothing too unusual. Honestly, I think it's pretty straightforward. One of the things you'll notice is we actually have two ways to do the mixture. We have this needle here where we can actually pull a fuel flow until it points to our selected power of 75. Other option, of course, is we can use the EDM here, which does a really nice job. Both options are fine. You can also do it by ear if you're very brave like that, but like I said, it's kind of up to you how you want to kind of manage that aspect of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come scrolling down here. I'm going to go ahead and lean find. It's going to say Richard prop. We're at 75% power, so no lean for us. And the way this works is really easy. Go ahead and start pulling the mixture back. Again, you're going to notice these needles are going to start growing a little bit. That's what we expected. And what's going to happen is you're going to get fuel flow in the bottom, and you're going to get EGT at the top. What we're trying to do is find peak RPM, or peak EGT rather. And all I'm going to do, and as you can see, I'm doing one little tiny click at a time. Just trying to pull it back to find that sweet spot. Again, it's using cylinder 4, which doesn't surprise me. Because, whoa, that's hot. That's hot. Ready? 1606, 1607. Oh, here we go. We're about to find it. Ready? It's going to start going down in a second. Watch this. There it goes. 1611 is our peak here. So I'm just going to keep pulling it down until it screams at us. And now it's going to give us a little display that tells us how fast peak we are. We're actually 30 degrees over peak right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to enrich in the mixture a little bit here, and I'm going to try to get this to get down to about minus 50. So again, it does not take much. It does take a moment to settle. Like I said, just kind of give it a nice gentle tap there, and you can see it's about to run away on me. And that's about minus 50 right there. I'm going to call it right there. I'm going to press the step button. I'm happy with that. Our mixture is now set. I wish there was a lock button so I could prevent it. Now, one of the things you'll notice is if I scoop my head up here, you'll notice my needle is not quite on the 75% line here. We're actually running a little on the rich side. We could actually pull this back a little bit if we wanted to, but for our purposes, 50 degrees rich is fine. We could probably do peak, but it's going to give us a lot of cylinder pressure, and we might not necessarily want that. Next problem we're going to deal with is this problem. It is 50 degrees in the cabin, even though the heat is turned on. And the reason that, of course, is the fact that our little gas burner is not strong enough to keep us warm in here. You can see it is absolutely positively freezing, even though the combustion heater is just kind of chewing along here. So we're going to give it help. We're going to go ahead and pull these two on. And what this does is this is going to open up the intercoolers here. And instead of getting nice cool air into the cabin from the engines, we're going to get the hot air from the engines. And one of the things I like to do here is I come over here to manual heat mode. I turn on the blower to maximum heat. Make sure these two switches are heated, and one of the things you will see now is the heat's going to come rushing out of our uncooled air, slam into this, and it's going to be basically spitting fire, and not the rhyme variety of fire, but basically the conventional variety of fire at us. While I'm doing that, though, I'm going to go check on cylinder 4 again, because cylinder 4 just has to be that way. Yuck! We do not have cowl flaps open enough. Click. That should do it. Nice. And that looks pretty good to me. You can see our combustion heater plus the collective air from our lovely intercoolers from our turbochargers is now flooding into the cabin. And you can see this thing basically warming up right quick. The other thing we like to check, of course, when we're cruising along like this is making sure pressurization looks good. One of the things we're looking for here is just to confirm that we're not climbing or descending. It's going to jiggle. It's not going to be accurate. That's just the way these things work. And I look over here, I can see my differential pressure is perfect. It's less than my maximum there. Our cabin is about 9,500 feet. We selected about 9,500 feet, which, like I said, we went a little bit high in that regard. Just again, to try to conserve that the best we can. And again, in just a few minutes, it's going to be so hot in here, the air is going to start waving back and forth. And in the real world, of course, we're super duper cautious with things like that because we don't want to hurt ourselves. Again, carbon monoxide is very real. I love the fact they give you this little pulse oximeter here just to kind of give you a general gist to know just how warm it is inside this cabin, or how little air you have, I'm sorry. Warm we got here, air we got here. One of the things you can do, of course, is if this gets below, I think 88 is where it starts getting really grumpy at you, you have an oxygen mask that you can turn on. There's this little switch right here. If I click this little switch to the on position, you're going to start breathing basically air. You can't see the mask. You know, if you want to go full RP here, you can put a mask on or something like that to kind of go through with the motions. But the important thing here is you'll notice that the oxygen level in my blood will actually slowly start to rise because I'm breathing oxygen directly rather than getting it from my slightly pressurized cabin in here. Of course, what are the limits? 12,500 feet or above. Obviously, for half an hour, we do have to get some air on. It's up to you. Just remember to fill this thing up once in a while if that's something that you would like to do. For us, we're fine. I'm going to go shut that off for now, and we're good to go. Let's take a look at our lovely cylinder number 4 here. Cylinder 4 is chilling at 389. Notice the cylinder 4 and the other one's much cooler. The cylinder 5 is the one you have to watch out for on the other side. But again, 389 is perfect. Like I said, anything less than 390 is perfectly fine. And yes, you can go significantly higher than that if you look up at the limit here. But you have any idea how much I paid for this airplane? This thing was like $70 for both of them. I'm just saying. I like to conserve my airplane as long as I can. So that is basically it for your chores inside the aircraft during any sort of cruising. One thing I do need to do is flip my heat back to auto. You'll notice I'm at 76 degrees in here. Whoa, that is warm. One thing you get in the real world, of course, is you can actually feel how warm it gets almost instantly. So you can see here, we're pretty darn warm. And again, if I pop out my tablet here, you can see it's still spitting some fire in here, but at least it's coming down a little bit and then kind of stabilizing. And it will stabilize relatively quickly. And again, it's just nice that they even modeled all that. Again, our engines are working perfectly fine. Everybody's kind of moving smoothly. Our options are good. Everything else is good to go. And we just sort of kick back and relax. Like I said, this is a cruising plane. This is, I try to think of it as the world's smallest airliner. It's kind of a sort of the visual my brain gives me. And it checks out because basically, again, you're just going from one place to another. Again, 23,000 feet in 15 minutes. That's not bad. That's pretty comfortable, actually. And I can take a look down here at the right. I've got about 43 minutes to get to my destination. I'm not going to make you sit here for 43 minutes. But what I am going to do is figure out how we're going to get back down. So we have 23,000 feet underneath us. Montreal is more or less 1,000 feet for a traffic pattern altitude. So if you get a calculator out there, for those of you who are following along at home, so to speak, we can do the math. So we're 23,000 feet, and we're going to go ahead and subtract our pattern altitude is about 1,200. 22,000 feet. Now, if we do 1,000 feet per minute, I know you're going to be like, duh, it will take 22 minutes to descend. Now, this is where everybody's mind gets a little confused here. Let me show you why this gets tricky as far as descent goes. The thing I notice here is I'm getting a ground speed of 241 knots, true, which is pretty darn good. We're moving. The other reason that's interesting is as we descend, this number is naturally going to change because if I look over at my airspeed indicator, you'll notice that my actual limit, my VNO here, is about 215, about 212 knots. The reason that's important is up here we can descend faster than we can at lower altitudes. So that lovely number of 242 is delightful. assuming the wind and this altitude is underneath us. Once we get lower, we can no longer rely on that as a number for being able to estimate how long we have to get. So what I like to do is I like to basically estimate it based on the VNO speed and kind of work backwards. So take a look here, about 212. So 212, and we can do the math. So let's see here. We need, what do we say, 22 minutes descent time? So if I do 22 divided by 60, that's 0.36 of an hour descent time. Now, if I multiply that by that speed, like I said, about 210, whoa, helps if I do the math correctly, 0.36 times 210, you'll see that gives me about a 75-mile descent time at that particular speed. Now, this is a pretty good estimate for us. And the reason that's so helpful is if we jump back into here, if I look over my current distance, I can see I'm about 166 nautical miles away. Now, if your brain does some really, really fast math, which it will do quicker than mine, you will notice about half of this distance is about half of this time, which is about 22 minutes. Neat. So we know that we need to start descending right around the time this is about 20 minutes. And one of the things we'll deal with when we start descending, of course, is coming down here and fiddling with this. So let's do some magical fast forwarding. Oh, would you look at that? Now we've got 21 minutes to descend. Let's start descending. Sweet. Descent in this thing is super duper easy. All I'm going to do is select my desired altitude, which, like I said, is about that pattern altitude of about 1,200 feet there. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to push this button, pull this out to 12, push it back in, and we're going to get the process started. So to do this, I just shut off my altitude mode by pressing attitude, and then I go ahead and fiddle with this little thing right here, which says pitch control, until I see that I'm getting about 1,000 feet per minute. So I'm going to go give it a couple taps there. Tap, tap. And that's going to get us, let's see, a tap. That looks about the sweet spot. There's our 1,000 feet per minute. So now our chores are going to get busy. And this is one of the things I like to do. First things first, close your cow flaps. The reason we want to close those suckers is we're going to be cooling this engine pretty right quick. I'm going to reduce my power to about 30 inches. Again, I'm going to leave that alone. Prop sync I'll leave on, which is going to be pretty good for us. And we're going to start making our descent down towards our destination. Now, here's where everybody starts forgetting things, including myself for about the 1,000,000th time. A couple things we need to worry about now. First one, of course, is going to be our pressure. The first mistake I made when I flew this plane is I immediately grabbed onto this needle and cranked it to 0. You can't do that. If you crank this needle to 0, you will overpressurize the plane because your differential pressure will smack into this, and the whole plane's going to get very, very grumpy at you very quickly. Instead, leave this alone. Don't touch this needle. We're actually going to, don't touch that dial. I mean, we're going to, Canada. I mean, Rush, come on. So one of the things we're going to do here is we're going to enjoy our descent without playing with this. And again, we can reduce this once we get under that 9,500 feet here. Next, what we need to do is we need to monitor our cabin temperature. One of the things that'll make you crazy about this plane is the fact this plane is going to get really, really warm on the way down. As a matter of fact, let me open this little tablet up real quickly here. If I take a look at my engines, actually, who cares about those right now? One of the things you'll notice, of course, is our engines are still producing a ton of heat here. And the reason I know they're producing a ton of heat is we're still at 30 inches of power here. We're moving pretty darn quick. And the reason that's important to us, of course, is because of the fact that this heat is going to quickly overwhelm even what this little combustion heater can't produce. And it's going to get very warm here, especially on the turbine version of this airplane, which, like I said, that will be a different video. Oh, look at that nice ski slope. Different video for another day. Ooh, shiny. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave that alone for now. If it really, really scares you and you're afraid of making it too warm inside the cabin, again, you can see the outside air temperature here. One of the things you can do is you can close one of these. Closing one of those is usually enough for 90% of your heating issues coming down. Obviously, if you're in Dubai in the summer, that's not going to help. You're probably using air conditioning at that point anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this one. Again, you just close that one side. That's usually enough to kind of keep it happy. And again, you can bring the blower down a little bit to kind of take some of that down. Some people say, hey, how do we know what the outside air temperature is? Et voilà. You can see this actually nice little needle here. I like how you can tap on it and kind of get ready. The next chore for us, of course, on the way down is monitoring our descent. We're getting 1,000 feet per minute. The reason I know that there's no VS mode, like I said, we don't have that. I just play with the pitch knob until I get it kind of the way that I want. So our temperature is good. Our pressurization is going to be left alone. I can't say that enough. One thing I do want to do is be thinking about the mixture, though. Obviously, our mixture right now was optimized for a cruise flight. Once we cross under, again, we're turbocharged, so we're at 30 inches. The turbocharger is working right now, and we have a pretty even airflow into that engine anyway. If it really scares you or makes you nervous, at any point you can come here and jam the mixture throttle control forward. We're not at 33,000 feet here. You're not going to have any of that kind of goofiness that sometimes comes with kind of fiddling with these particular settings. So if you need to, slam it up now so you don't have to stress with it later, unless you're much higher, in which case leave it alone until you at least get down to your critical altitude. For me, I'm going to slam it forward. Again, I'm not paying for the gas in this thing, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. We're going to monitor engine temps on the way down, of course, so you can see our give me cylinder 4. Cylinder 4. Thank you. Cylinder 4 is at 384, which, like I said, we're trying to keep it right around 390 degrees, which is optimum. Now, there's one other thing we can do with this lovely EDM, which is really helpful here. And there's this thing that says cold. This tells you how fast your cylinders are cooling. Right now, we're losing 2 degrees Fahrenheit per minute. That's nothing. If this gets bigger than 33, however, we're cooling our cylinders much too quickly here. So we're fine. And again, we slammed the cow flaps closed, and we're not going to have to deal with those guys again until we get ready for landing and an approach. But again, that's just something you want to monitor. If this number starts getting really small, like you're getting to like minus 20, you can always, of course, make sure your cow flaps are closed. You can increase power, or you can decrease your descent speed. Usually that combination works pretty well for you. So what I'm going to do is I'll fast forward until we cross 10,000. All right, so we're just about to 10,000 feet, and we're ready to kind of get ready. You can actually see Montreal up there in the strait. Of course, me as an uneducated American called Montreal, or Montreal. Anyway, so what we're going to do here is we're going to start getting ready for kind of the last part of our flight here. And one thing I need to do is I need to actually do a little bit of maintenance on my vertical speed here because we're starting to get to the thicker air. The other thing we need to do, of course, is kind of deal with the pressurization problem. And notice over, by the way, we're at 71 degrees, and that makes perfect sense because remember, we shut one of those off so we wouldn't have to kind of babysit it. The outside air temperature now, as I look over my corner here, it's pretty cold still, so it helps to keep at least one engine of that heat going just to kind of deal with us. We're going to get an MSG warning here. It's going to give us about 1 million different airspace alerts. That's okay. We knew that was coming. I haven't had to touch anything else this entire descent, which has been fantastic, by the way. So now what I'm going to do is get ready for kind of the pressurization problem. So right now we are descending at about 1,000 feet per minute, and we're crossing 10,000 feet. Now the thing you will notice is our cabin pressure will auto-magically start reducing on its own. Now this is actually great because what will happen is this needle will now start winding itself down based on whatever the exterior pressure is. Remember when I said don't play with it? The reason that's so handy is it basically doesn't need to be babysitted until we get ready for approach, in which case we have to dump the pressure in the cabin so we don't blow everybody's eardrops or pop something out if we hit the ground a little too hard. So that's just one of the great things about this aircraft. We could have kind of caught it early if we wanted to and basically wound it down, but you can see our differential pressure is actually 0. We can only add air to the cabin. We can't remove air to the cabin easily. So that actually makes our life much simpler. We can just basically let this needle wind itself downwards here. One thing we could do, of course, we could try to puff it back up or something and hold some differential pressure if you wanted, but this works actually pretty well. Again, like I said, if we want to get a little sophisticated, let me show you what's going to happen here when we do this. So let's go ahead and set that to 5,000 feet. Let's go ahead and set that down to 2,000, 3,000. I'll zoom back in a little bit here. Set this to about 1,000 feet, which is our goal here. And if we were to take our pressurization rate and slam it closed, you'll see I just pulled that all the way to 0. We are basically going to be holding our cabin at the current altitude for that particular purpose here. The advantage to this, of course, is it's going to be a little bit more gentle on our passengers' ears. The downside is we're now going to have very miserable passengers once we cross that lower altitude. So like I said, again, just kind of leave that on its own mode, and it does usually pretty darn well. So the next thing we're going to do, of course, as we're getting ready for coming in for a landing here, is we're going to pop on our landing lights, and nothing is going to happen. And the reason nothing's going to happen is our landing lights are actually stored on our tires here. So there's nothing to see. So we can also turn this one on if you want. And again, nothing to see because we don't have that one visible. One of the challenging parts that you're going to have, of course, which at least I always find challenging, is keeping the cylinders cool once you get low. Let me go back to our lucky cylinder 4 here. You could see we've lost a lot of temperature on those cylinders, even though our power has not changed. Again, we've got more cooling air available. We've been sinking. Notice this needle has not moved our entire descent. You'll have to believe me because you didn't see the whole descent. But that's just to give you an idea of how smooth of a transition we've had here. And again, Montreal is right off our nose here. So let's do some quick idiot checks here. I'm 6 minutes away and I have 7,000 feet. I win the math. I win. So again, those are just some little things. And obviously, once we get over about 50 degrees, we can actually shut off the intercooler here. Close enough. My passengers will deal. Sorry, guys. Click. And again, if it's the middle of winter in Canada, this is the middle of spring in Canada, we would probably have to leave one of those or two of those on. Pressurization set. That's set. That set, all sets good. Again, we didn't have any ice today, so we didn't need to worry about that. Fuel set, mixture set, RPM set, throttle set. Everything is ready to go. So now it's just a matter of getting this thing down on the ground, which we'll say for the next video. Enjoy.